Your program, your programmer. Why does that happen when it says "got it" on your for the recording?
Yeah.
Right. If I press enter for most things, that'll go away. But here it won't
That's right. That's the default button. It's the same as clicking on the button.
Yeah, I have to use the mouse or whatever. All right. Rabbi Yehuda says we do not raise one to the kahuna by the testimony of one witness. Said Reb Elazar, when there are contestants, but when there are no contestants, we raise one to the kahuna by the testimony of one witness. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Sigan, when we raise one to the kahuna by the testimony of one witness, we raise one witness. Okay. A woman who is imprisoned by the Gentiles, if because of money, is permitted to her husband. But if it was for the purpose of taking her life, she is prohibited to her husband. A city that was conquered by a besieging troop, all Kohanim's wives found therein are unfit. But if they have witnesses, even a slave, even a maidservant, they are believed. A person is not believed about himself, said Reb Zechariah ben Katsav, by this temple, the hand did not move out of my hand from the time the Gentiles entered Jerusalem until they left. And they said to him, a person cannot testify for himself. And in these cases, people are believed to testify when they are age about what they saw when they were minors. A person is believed to say, this is my father's handwriting, and this is my teacher's handwriting, and this is my brother's handwriting. I remember so-and-so, that she went out with a veil and with her hair untied, and that so-and-so went out of school to immerse himself in order to eat truma, and that he shared with us on the threshing floor. And this place is a base haparis, and until here we get used to go to on the Sabbath. But a person is not believed to say so-and-so had a right of way in the place, and so-and-so had a stopping spot and a eulogizing spot in this place.
Okay. All right, so Perek Gimel, we're now moving into the subject of the knas for a girl who was violated. So if a person is found to have violated a girl, this is specifically talking about a girl who's under bas mitzvah, then there are two things that happen. One is he's got to pay a knas of what's called 50 shekels, 50 biblical shekels, which is also 200 zuz, which not coincidentally is the same amount that's in a kesubah. So he has to pay. So in your standard vanilla case, the rapist has to pay the 200 zuz to the girl's father, and then not only that, but since she's kilo damaged goods, if the father and the daughter both agree, then they can force the rapist to marry her, and he has no option of divorcing her. Okay, because this is, you made your bed, now you lie in it. Yeah. Okay, so now he's so that's your standard halakha, and it starts out by the Mishnah starts out by giving us some exceptional cases where you. The obvious case is the one where I just described. You have a regular guy, regular girl, but now there are also some cases over here where you might have thought that they wouldn't have a knas, that there wouldn't be any penalty, and it starts out with the cases where the woman is asa to him because of a mitzvah or because of an erva. Okay. These are the ones who you pay a knas to. Haba'al mamzeris. Right, he's not allowed to marry the mamzeris. So even though he cannot be coerced to marry her because she's actually asa to him, but nonetheless the mamzeris is still entitled to the 200 zuz knas if he does actually violate her. Similarly, of course,
he can't. Even though there's a halacha that he has to marry her, he can't.
So in this case, he can't marry her because it doesn't override the Torah prohibition of marrying a mamzeris.
Does that have any effect on him marrying anyone else?
No, she's always been allowed to marry a mamzer or a ger.
Right.
She can marry a mamzer or a ger, no problem. It's just that her mum carries on ad infinitum. A child of a mamzer is a mamzer. Okay. Okay, three people that he would not be allowed to marry himself, but nonetheless, the kus is interesting. The shomronim, it's interesting because if they are, because there was we we frequently talk about the kusim as very dodgy gerim, and we didn't really trust them that much. But are they really gerim? Well, if they are gerim, then why would you think not? And if they're not gerim, if they're non-Jews, then why should they in fact get a knas if they're not actually Jews? Because their status as Jews was revoked at one point when it was discovered that they were en masse worshipping of Avodah Zarah. Anyways, that's an interesting thing over there. I think we must be talking about the time in the Mishnah when the kusim were considered to be valid converts, but I think intermarriage with them was not encouraged. Anyway, Habana Gioris, if he violates a Gioris, Va'al Hashavuya, Va'al Shivcha, or a captive or a slave girl, so again, we saw that when they converted less than 3 years, and they're still considered a virgin. Remember, this payment is only due to a girl who's considered a virgin. Whereas if she converted later, then she's not considered a virgin, she doesn't get the knas. Now, what happens if he has relations with his sister? This is a kares, okay? There's a few kares over here. Similarly, his father's sister or his mother's sister, or his wife's sister, or the wife of his brother. Now, this is not while she's his wife. And she's got to be a virgin, which means that his brother must have done erusin with her, and then divorced her before going to the chuppah. Okay, so al eshes achi aviv, and the same thing over here for his uncle's wife. Al hanida. And even if the girl is a nida, all of these are kares, right? But nonetheless, yesh lahem knas. They still have a knas. Af al pi shehen be kares. Even despite the fact that the punishment for this avera is kares. Ein bahen misas based in. Since there's no misas based in involved, he still has to pay the fine. But we saw that we'll see in the next Mishnah that anything where the punishment is a death penalty, then you don't pay the fine. However, if there were witnesses to these violations which involved kares, then he's going to get lashes. So, and in time when somebody gets lashes, they don't pay money. Okay. Mishnah Beis, Elu she'ein lehen knas. So here are the cases where the knas is not paid. Habala gioris v'ala shavuya v'ala shivcha sheniftu v'shenisgayu v'shenistachru yiseres al b'nos shalosh shanim v'yom echad. So the converse of our previous Mishnah, where they only became Jewish, or they were captured after they were 3 years old, in which case they're no longer considered virgins, and therefore there's no knas. Rabbi Yehuda omer shavuya sheniftes harei b'kedusha sa afal pi shehi gedola. So Rabbi Yehuda is a das yachid, a lone voice, who says that the shvuya retains her chazaka of not being violated. Okay, but the halacha does not follow him. Habal bito, if he violates his own daughter, well bas bito, or his granddaughter, al bas beno, al bas ishto, or the daughter of his wife, al bas bena, or the daughter of her granddaughter. Okay. Ein lahem knas. There's no knas in all of these cases. Because all of these averas involve kares. Now, interesting question, just a little side note. How could it be his daughter? Because if it was his daughter, who would he pay the knas to? He'd be paying it back to himself. So the Mishnah must be talking. The Mishnah must be talking about a case where his daughter has gone into her own rishus. How? If he gave her an erusin, and before she went to the chuppah, her husband divorced her, which means that now she's called yasama b'chayei aviha. She's an orphan during her father's lifetime. So now her father has severed his connection to her because she was married, and now she's divorced, and now whatever she gets is hers. So in that case, he would have to have paid the fine to her. Or alternatively, he might have violated her while she was a minor, and she might only have claimed it when she was a Bulgarian, at which point, again, the father has no jurisdiction over her.
She go back to her father's house then?
She would live with him, but in terms of halakha of whether she's entitled to knas or not. The knas goes to her, not to her father. Okay. Because right, and all of these cases here, because his death penalty is in the hands of the based in Shalmata. And anyone who's chayav misa does not pay monetary damages. Because, and we learn that from the pasuk that if there's not going to be an ason is somebody being executed, anoshi anesh, then he has to pay. Okay. Gemol nara shenis arsha v'nisgarsha. So a girl who was given in marriage to Erisin, but was divorced before going to the chuppah. Now here we see explicitly that Machlokes Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer ein la knas. He says that such a girl has no such thing as a knas. Rabbi Akiva disagrees. He says yesh la knas u'knas al atzma. Now of course she still has the knas, but the knas goes to her instead of to her father. And the halacha does follow Rabbi Akiva. Okay.
Why would Yossi think that she's not entitled to the fine? She was betrothed.
So Rabbi Yossi clearly says there's no knas. Why? Because the din of the knas is mar basula asher lo arasa. That's his limud. Is that the pasuk says it's a virgin girl who has not been engaged. Okay. Mm-hmm. And he says that excludes the one who was once engaged, even though she was divorced. He says it's just a there's a custom that she has no knas. The Kippur says no, it's only if she's not the orasa is talking about her present status. If she's divorced, then she's not orasa, and therefore she must get a knas. And since she's now technically an orphan in the lifetime of her father, then she keeps the knas. Okay. Back to Yevamos.
Said Zion Dalet. If a man fell into water, whether all its shores are in sight or not, his wife is prohibited. Rameya said there was once an incident where someone fell into a large well and surfaced after 3 days. Rabbi Yossi said, even if he heard, Rabbi Yossi said there was once an incident where a blind man descended into a cave to immerse himself and was followed by his guide. They remained undetected long enough for them to have died, and the rabbis permitted their wives to remarry. There was another incident at Asya where someone was lowered into the sea and they recovered nothing but his leg. The sages said if the leg was severed above the knee, the man may marry. If the leg was below the knee, he may not remarry. Even if he heard women saying, "Since so-and-so died, it is sufficient." Rabbi Yehuda says, even if he heard children saying, "We are going to eulogize and bury so-and-so," his testimony is valid whether he intends to testify or not. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava says a Jew's testimony is valid even if he intended to testify, but if a non-Jewish intended to testify, his testimony is not valid. Witnesses may testify even if they saw by lamplight and moonlight, and we permit remarriage on the basis of a voice. There was once an incident where someone stood on a hilltop and said, "So-and-so, the son of so-and-so from such and such a place has died." They went to the hilltop but found no one there, yet they permitted his wife to remarry. There was another incident in Zalman where someone said, "I am so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, and a snake has bitten me and I am dying." They went there, but they could not recognize him, yet they permitted his wife to remarry.
Back to Daled Yud Aleph.
If 4 brothers were married to 4 women, and they died, if the eldest of them wished to perform yibum with all of them, he may do so. If someone was married to 2 women and then died, conjugal relations or chalitza with one of them releases her co-wife. If one was qualified and one was disqualified, and if he was going to perform chalitza, he should do so with the disqualified one. But if he is going to perform yibum, he may do so with the qualified one. I don't remember ever seeing before that if Let me see. It's 4 brothers were married to 4 women and then died. The eldest of which to perform yibum with all of them. I don't remember seeing anywhere before with it where that he could perform yibum with all of them. I thought it was just one of them.
No, if there are 4 different brothers who all died.
Right. So the eldest.
So then the surviving brother has the right to perform yibum with all of them, because each one of them requires yibum in her own right.
Right. Can you do chalitza at that point?
Yeah, you can do chalitza, sure.
Yeah.
Anytime you can do yibum, you can do chalitza.
Right. I've never seen that before. All right.
Well, no, I say that a bit casually because a cheresh doesn't have the ability to perform chalitza, but he can do yibum.
If someone was married to 2 women and then died, conjugal relations or chalitza with one of them releases her co-wife. If one was qualified and one was disqualified, if he is going to perform chalitza, he should do it with the disqualified one. But if he's going to perform yibum, he may do so with the qualified one. If one remains married, if one remarries his divorced wife and he remarries his kalutza or the relative of his kalutza, he must send her away and a child of that mamzer. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. The sages, however, say a child is not a mamzer, but they admit that if he marries a relative of his divorced wife, then the child is a mamzer. Who is a mamzer? The child of any blood relation with whom cohabitation is prohibited by a negative commandment. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Reb Shimon Tatimni says the child of anyone for whom the punishment is karas at the hands of heaven, and the halacha follows his view. Reb Yeshua says the child of anyone for whom the punishment is death at the hands of the court. Reb Shimon ben Azai said, I have found a genealogical scroll in Jerusalem in which was written, so-and-so is a mamzer from a married woman, supporting Reb Yeshua's words. One whose wife died is permitted to marry her sister. If he divorced her and she died, he is permitted to marry her sister. If she married someone else and she died, he is permitted to marry her sister. If his Yavama died and he is permitted to marry her sister. If he performed chalitza with her and she died, he is permitted to marry her sister. Oh, wow. Okay. One more.
Next. Sukkah Aleph Tes. Excuse me.
Root. If one suspends the walls from above downwards, if they are 3 handbreadths above the ground, it is invalid. From below upwards, if he reaches a height of 10 tefakim from the ground, it is valid. Root. Yossi says, just as from below upwards 10 handbreadths suffice, so from above downwards 10 handbreadths. If one moved the skak 3 handbreadths away from the walls, it's invalid. A house that was breached and he placed skak above it, if these are 4 cubits from the wall, it is skak. It is invalid. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. A house that was breached and he placed skak over it, if there are 4 cubits from the wall to the skak, it is invalid. The same applies to a courtyard that is surrounded by a portico. A large sukkah that they ring with material that may not be used for skak. If there were 4 cubits beneath it, it is invalid. If one makes a sukkah like a conical hut or he leaned it against the wall, Reb Eliezer invalidates it since it has no roof, but the sages declare it valid. A large reed mat, if made to lie upon, is susceptible to contamination, and we may not use it for skak. If a shave, we may use it for skak, and it is not susceptible to contamination. From Eliezer says, whether the mat is small or large, if you made it to lie upon, if it is susceptible to contamination, and we may not use it as skak. If for skak, we may use it for skak, we may use it for skak, and it is not susceptible to contamination. One who sleeps under the bed in the sukkah.
That's it. We're done for you. Okay. Shumas, hey Zion.
If a saw of truma fell into 100, and one lifted it out, and another fell in, and he lifted it out, and another fell in, it is permitted until the truma exceeds the chulin. If a saw of truma fell into 100, and before one could lift it out, another fell in, it's forbidden. That's what Reb Shimon permits. If a saw of truma fell into 100, and one ground them and they became less, just as the chulin became less, so the truma became less. It is permitted. If a sore of truma fell into less than 100 and one ground them and they increased, just as the chulin increased, so the truma increased, and it is forbidden. If it is known that the chulin wheat is superior to that of truma, it is permitted. If a sore of truma fell into less than 100 and chulin fell in afterwards, if accidentally, it is permitted. If intentionally, it is forbidden.
Sein, hey?
If the first baby was born dead and the second alive, the living baby is tahor. The first baby was alive and the second dead, the living baby is tameh. If Reb Meir said, if they are in one fetal sac, the living baby becomes tameh. However, if they are in two fetal sacs, the living baby is tahor. If a woman is having difficult labor, the offspring is dismembered and the offering is dismembered inside her and removed limb by limb because her life takes precedence over his life. But if most of the baby has emerged, one may not harm him because one may not push aside one life for another. I can't understand how they could really do that, because they didn't have the medical technology to say, we're going to do this inside, that's, dismember the baby like that.
I don't know. I mean, if the woman is in labor, particularly if she's dilated, then they could probably get inside with whatever tools to take out piece by piece.
I don't know. It just seems like it would be like a cruel thing, a cruel thing to the baby with the woman, All right.
A second.
Excuse me? Okay. If the first baby was born dead and the second alive, the living baby
we told that we've done this. We're in
All right. Anyway, Baruch Hashem, you have beautiful children. Grandchildren, good for them. Yeah. If a woman is having a difficult labor, the offspring is remembered inside.
Next one.
I did all.
Yes.
Okay. I think I'm over here. Let me see. I think so. There are items that, all right, these are items that spread tumor and act as barriers against tumor. Items that spread tumor but do not act as barriers against tumor. Items that act as barriers against tumor but do not spread tumor, and items that do not spread tumor and do not act as barriers against tumor. These spread tumor and act as barriers against tumor: a chest, a box, a cabinet, a large straw basket, a large reed basket, and the water tank of an Alexandria ship, if they have flat bottoms and contain 40 saw of liquid, which is two cores of dry measure, a curtain, a work apron, a bed cover, a sheet, matting, and a mat. If they have been made into a tent, a herd of animals, whether non-kosher or kosher, large of wild animals, and nests of birds, a bird that is resting, and one who makes a place for a son among the stalks, the iris, the kisum, kamor, greens, the Greek gourd, and the food that remain tahor. And Yochanan ben Nori disagrees concerning food that remains tahor, except for a pressed cake of figs. Okay. On to
Ideas.
Okay, Dalit tests. 3 brothers, 2 of whom were married to 2 sisters, and the third one was a bachelor. If one of the 2 sisters' husbands died and the bachelor performed mama with the widow, then the second brother died, Beis Shammai says his wife may remain with him, and the other woman is his charge because she is his wife's sister. But Beis Hillel says he must discharge his wife with both a get and chalitza, and his second brother's wife with chalitza. Concerning this, they stated, woe unto him over his wife, and woe unto him over his brother's wife. One who pronounces a view prohibiting his wife to have marital relations, Beis Shammai says 2 weeks. Beis Hillel says 1 week. If she miscarries during the night beginning the 81st day, Beis Shammai exempts her from additional offerings, but Beis Shammai obligates her to bring additional offerings. Regarding sisters in a linen nightcloth, Beis Shammai says exempts it, but Beis Hillel obligated. A basket of fruit for the Sabbath, Beis Shammai exempted, but Beis Hillel ruled that it becomes subject to the tithing obligation. If someone declared a Naziris of long duration, completed his term of Naziris, and then came to the Holy Land, Beis Shammai says he must be a Nazir for 30 days. But Beis Hillel said he must be a Nazir from the beginning. someone about whom groups of witnesses were testifying. These testified that he declared 2 terms of Naziris, and these testified that he declared 5 terms of Naziris. Beis Shammai says the testimony is split, and there is no Naziris here. But Beis Hillel say 2 is included in 5, and so he is a Nazir for 2.
10.
That's it. Okay.
Oh.
I was going to tell you this. I was going to tell you the story the other day, but you were running to the Dobbin.